Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, Maggie.
How are you?
I'm energized. How are you?
I know, I like it. Your high was like so ready. I'm good. I feel like we have we have a type of topic that we tend to gravitate towards.
We have a theme.
A theme, yeah.
I think it's the mindset around spending.
Yeah.
Or not spending.
And I also think like you and me lean towards the topic, which let me tell you what the topic is real quick, then I'll come back to this. So if you're like, what's going on? Where am I? This is the Inside Out Money Podcast. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. I'm Maggie. This is Erica. Every week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. Like I said, Erica's here today, and we're going to talk about consumerism, the environmental impact, a little bit about the economy, the like impact on our wallets, and really just like how we can do better. And Erica, one of the reasons I feel like you and I tend to like gravitate towards these topics, my interpretation of it at least is like we both want to do better and have the like ideals and desire, but we don't always do it, right? Like we're trying to get better. We have good intentions. Our follow through is mixed at different times, right? And I say that as much about myself.
Oh, no, I think you and I are very aligned in that we aspire to buy less. You've encouraged me with minimalism. It's just kind of hard to actually accomplish in this world we live in. And also like when we hang out, we kind of like egg each other on like, oh, buy that weird thing right there. Like have that. And it's fun.
Don't let us go shopping together.
Yeah,
That's
it's
even
fun
worse.
in the moment.
I compare us to like, Andrew, like I think even Liz is more with us. We're talking about other co-hosts here. Like Andrew doesn't desire as much physical stuff as I think you and I do. Like it doesn't take as much like muscle for him to grow and build to fight the consumerism that is being thrown at us as it does for like you and me. And I think maybe even Liz. And so I just think that's why it's an interesting topic because like even minimalism, like I aspire to be more minimalist in my life, but I'm not very good at it sometimes, right? And I'm always trying though. It's like what I want. So anyways, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think what's interesting about this particular topic is this combines and sort of triangulates like a bunch of things that are intersecting right now in our minds and in the world. One is we're going to talk about this Netflix documentary called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy. It came out, I want to say a few months ago, but it might have been like 6 months now. Oh, it came out in November of 2024. So that was, 5 months ago. It combines a lot of concepts from that, which we'll talk about. It also combines like what's going on with the economy right now. So Andrew and I just did an episode on this a few weeks ago. It's a crazy time. Things are literally changing day by day. The day Eric and I are recording this is the day that all these new tariffs were formally announced on each country and the specific amounts. And the stock market, oh my goodness. I mean, I'm not even like, don't let it stress you out. Go listen to that episode Andrew and I did to not let it stress you out. Even today, like what's happening in the economy, like it's a little hard to watch. It feels not great, right? And so I think the idea of like what's happening with consumerism and then also what's happening with the economy and how it's impacting our wallet, like the reality is this is a really good time to consume less and to be more thoughtful and intentional with how we are spending our money and using our dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're looking at this topic, it comes to the question of why do we keep buying stuff we don't need? And we're all victims of it.
Do you know the answer to that question, Erica?
I mean, I don't know. It's like we've talked about this in various episodes of the show we've done here, which is called Inside Out Money, in case you've forgotten
You don't know
since
where
Maggie
you're at.
introed this where you are. But we've talked about this because, like you said, this is the topic that we really enjoy talking about. So why do we keep buying stuff we don't need? Could be keeping up with the Joneses. Could be the marketing pressures that we talked about in an episode that Maggie will highlight later, where we talked about how Sigmund Freud's nephew was the one who came up with manipulating the masses in a post-war economy to make people believe they need to buy these things to be happy. We're starting to call BS on this now. People are starting to get the hint, some better than others, like we just said. So I don't know why we keep doing it. We keep thinking that things, tangible things, will fulfill some sort of need, void, hole, what have you. And yeah, maybe the marketing is really good. Maybe it's something that's just in our subconscious that's poking at us. But I would be curious to break this down with Andrew of what's going on in his brain.
Well, I think he's wired a little bit differently. I think some people are naturally wired to want and desire less. I would always say this with Mike from Friends on Fire, right? My old podcast. He also, it wasn't even that he was more disciplined than the average person. He didn't want the stuff, right? And so everybody's different, right? All humans are different. And their level of desire, their susceptibility to marketing, they're not just marketing, but also just not even peer pressure is not the word, but keeping up with the Joneses and the influences around us that make us want more. Sometimes, I think about it with food, right? I can eat really healthy until all of a sudden there's crap in my house that my kids have that all of a sudden I'm really tempted to eat. When it's not around me, I'm fine. When it's in front of me, I'm not fine. I eat it, right? And I think there's something around that it is a mix of a lot of things, not just the marketing tactics, but it's, all the things we see around us. It's social media.
I think the tactics, whatever they are, whether it's external or, if you use the food reference, there's often a boredom or an emotion that needs to be filled with eating. There's emotional eating. There's
yeah, we're filling a void.
Once we all started working from home during COVID, I noticed I snacked a lot more because I'd walk by the kitchen and be like, oh, what's here? I didn't have that option in my office. And so it's the same thing with shopping and buying things you don't need. There's a boredom there or, an emotion that comes in, the term retail therapy speaks to that. So
yeah,
it's really diving into what are you trying to satisfy in doing that, which we're not here to therapize why you or Maggie or I spend our money the way we do. We're here to say let's talk about the Netflix documentary first, and then we can.
But we will get into some things after we talk about the documentary that I hope are more action oriented and will give you guys and us, myself, and everybody listening, a bit of motivation and pep talk to try to consume less, right? And to try to combat some of the barriers that this documentary was talking about. Because I will say the documentary did a good job of exposing the problem. It really was not focused on the solution, right? So we'll sort of shift from the problem to the solution. But like you said, let's talk about the documentary. I highly recommend everybody go watch it. It's on Netflix. It's, I don't remember, under 2 hours. I made my kids watch it. I frequently make my kids watch a documentary like this. I just feel like it's educational. I like to make them watch documentaries about social media too. Sometimes I think even if 1% lands with them, that's something. Okay. So this documentary came out in November 2024. It's very recent. It was directed by Nick Stacy. I have no idea who that is. I just want to give a shout out to Nick Stacy for directing this documentary. And it's really focused on consumerism and overproduction. And it shows how corporations use very manipulative marketing tactics, you could also say tricks, to keep consumers buying more and more, and how they are actively trying to drive this, I'd call it, relentless level of consumerism.
So one of the biggest things in this documentary that they focus on is marketing tactics, which, as I mentioned earlier, is basically what Sigmund Freud's nephew came up with. And what these companies are doing is taking that theory that he created to manipulate the masses, and they just really hammered it home with algorithms and tracking what you search and making sure that you're constantly like, they will not let that thing that you searched for get away from you until you've purchased it.
The marketing thing is crazy because like you said, we have done episodes on this before. So you referenced it earlier, but we've done like episode 34 where we talked about predatory marketing tactics and how much companies are doing that are incredibly targeted and manipulative. And that's why we use the word predatory, because I do think there's a level beyond just marketing. Like I spent my whole career working in marketing, to be clear. And marketing is one thing. There's a point where it does become sort of the tipping point of it becoming predatory, where like, there's all sorts of things, and I don't want to get into a debate about this, but like, I know when I've got however many Alexas in my home, and like we talk about something 1 minute and I haven't even done a search on it, and I'm getting targeted ads for Instagram on it based on the fact that, I had been talking about it. We were on a trip one time, Erica, and
You and me?
You and me, but you and me and a bunch of other people. So I'm not calling any one particular person out. And somebody, it wasn't actually, I'm not even just saying this, but it wasn't even somebody in the group that had this problem, but we were having a conversation about adult bedwetting, which is a very specific topic. Do you even remember this?
No.
Okay. I think we were in like Arizona or something.
Oh.
And somebody was talking about it. And they were talking about somebody else, and like, it doesn't even matter. It was such a specific topic that I've never searched on, never had a conversation about before. The next day, I got targeted with some product that like helped with adult bedwetting. I don't remember what it was. And I was like, and it was so fucking specific. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't even something, like, it's like, you're listening to conversations I'm having with my friends, and I'm not even like thinking about that. Anyways, my point is, it has tipped, I think it has sort of gone to a tipping point. And this whole documentary was about like how much money and energy companies are putting into trying to convince you to buy things that you don't necessarily need, and that they want to convince you that these things will improve your life, make you happy, things you never needed that, the world has gotten by without. And also the volume of like new things, right? So fast fashion and the idea that you need to constantly replace things. There's a big focus on like planned obsolescence. And, that is the idea that companies are actually designing things to become obsolescent. So you have to buy new ones. iPhones are a great example. And the documentary actually really scrutinizes Apple's practices regarding planned obsolescence. So, Apple's like purposely designing things that are difficult to repair. There's been a lot of lawsuits over it. They're purposely changing, they remove the headphone jack. They made it more difficult for the battery to be replaced. They're purposely changing the chargers. And sometimes they claim that there's, technological reasons they're doing that, but also it requires everybody to buy like all new cords and all new chargers and, all this stuff. And so there are things where companies are from the beginning. I mean, the light bulb industry was one of the like oldest examples of planned obsolescence, where, decades later they admitted that they were actually dumbing down light bulbs to not last as long. They found ways to make light bulbs last longer, and they actually were getting, engineers to design light bulbs that only lasted a certain amount of time, so that consumers had to buy new light bulbs, every however many years.
It feels like it should be illegal, but it's legal. It's just deceptive.
It's unethical.
It's unethical. It's highly unethical. I will say Oregon did just pass a law known as the Right to Repair Act, which makes it easier and less expensive for consumers to fix their own electronic devices.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, which is awesome. I think it was like maybe one of 4 states to do it, although I can't figure out which other states have done it. But it's really cool. I mean, like people don't have $1,000 to spend on an iPhone for a cracked screen because you replace it, and like you could go
because your battery's just gone shot, which the battery just like quits working.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. By the way, other states have right to repair laws, like California, Minnesota, Colorado, New York, Washington. A number of ones have passed them. For some reason, this doesn't list Oregon, but I believe you. Yeah, the other thing too is like the waste. So there's obviously the impact to consumers of like, you've got to go rebuy that thing, and you've got to buy, a whole new phone just because your battery quit working. But it's also that phone is now a piece of waste. And so there's this whole section about the documentary or, theme throughout it that's about the environmental impact and really underscores the environmental damage that is being caused by all of this consumption. And it's creating just a massive amount of pollution. There's all sorts of companies that kind of claim things are recyclable and they're not really in any meaningful way. And it's just, it's really, the documentary spends a lot of time highlighting the global effect of the volume of waste that is happening and how much of that waste actually just ends up getting shipped to less developed countries, which is quite sad. So it's the countries that are consuming the most and, driving and creating this excessive consumerism aren't even dealing with the waste. They're just shipping it off to other countries and letting them deal with it.
So that's actually the article I was looking up. There was an Atlantic article probably a few years ago, and I'll see if I can find the right one to reference it. And this was actually, reading this article helped me shift my mindset around, Amazon had this amazing return policy. Well, the returns actually don't go anywhere where they're being used again. They just end up in exactly what you said, like a landfill or trash somewhere. And it really made me rethink or just think, do I really want to buy this one thing? Do I want to, is this a gamble worth taking? How badly do I want this to know that I'm either going to keep something I don't want if it doesn't work out, or it's going to end up being trash somewhere? Yeah, maybe I'll get my money back, but what is the longer term effect of this not actually going to a person to be consumed?
Well, we'll talk about this in some of our more actionable tips at the end, but yeah, you want to think about the burden of ownership, right? Is that you're not just buying this thing, but you now need to think about the fact that you are responsible for the waste that you've created if this thing doesn't work out in your life, right? And there's a cool stat that I think this was just from one Amazon warehouse, or maybe it was all of them combined. I don't know. But it was a stat around Amazon that they are destroying 130,000 products every week. Because sometimes, a lot of times when things are sent back, they are not reselling them. It's not even worth it to them. They're just destroying them, which is trash, to be clear. It's not like they're just magically poof, they're gone,
So if you're saying that they destroy it because to them it's trash, then it's kind of like we're buying trash. We're just buying garbage from them.
Yeah. Yeah. One man, what's the phrase? One man's
trash is another man's trash? Treasure
is
trash?
It one man's trash is another man's treasure, or the other way?
Trash is trash?
What's the treasure trash? We're both Googling it.
Yeah.
What's the treasure trash quote? One man's trash is another man's treasure. Well, that's the opposite. But the other point, you actually reverse that, right? The common saying is, I like the saying of one man's trash is another man's treasure, or woman's trash is another woman's treasure, because I often pick up, what someone puts out on the street, and I'm I've half the things in my house. I won't say half, but some percentage, one of my kids' desks was a neighbor put out in the trash. It's very nice.
Well, it's repurposing. Let's maybe not say they put it out in the trash. They
put it on their curb, and then I picked it up.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that the opposite, you can reverse that quote, which is, one man's treasure is another man's trash, because that treasure will eventually turn into trash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is sad. So one of the things that the documentary actually talks about at one point that I thought was interesting, again, exposing the problem, not the solution. And I think this was actually an industry executive from Adidas or somewhere. There were actually a bunch of insider former executives at some of these big companies that were starting to feel pretty bad about what they were doing and the waste that they were, the incremental consumerism and thus waste that they were putting into the world. But they were kind of making the point in the documentary of, ultimately, it's these companies are putting all this crap out into the world and marketing it and selling it, making all this money. And then all of the waste from it, they're just shipping it off to various places where they can ship it off to for free. But they don't have any true accountability for the true impact of where this stuff goes, and saying they should have a better level of accountability. Yes, we should have a level of accountability around our own purchasing habits, but also companies and corporations should have more accountability over what the actual full life cycle of their product is, right? What happens if you're going to, Apple or Adidas creating clothes or whatever, the volume of new shoes that comes out and new fashion that comes out. What is the full life cycle of what you're creating, and where does it go, and what's the full impact that thing has on the world? And corporations are not really having to think about that, right? But they should. And I think that's one of the like call to actions to companies was, they should be thinking about that full piece and have more accountability towards it. And there was a, big focus throughout the documentary on corporate practices. And again, they interviewed a lot of like former employees and executives from companies that admitted to some of their unsavory practices and how they didn't feel good. And sometimes that's why they left the company eventually. And yeah, there was a call for greater corporate accountability in addressing some of the environmental impacts of the consumerism that these companies have created. Because it's like chicken or egg. I don't think you can blame the consumer. Yes, we have some accountability towards it, but I think just as much as on the corporation.
Like Adidas and Nike are good examples of companies because they're global. They're not the cheapest to buy. So like if you're buying a pair of Jordans or something, this is what the boy one in my family is very into, is like really nice shoes. He's become a sneakerhead. So we're like, this is something you like save up for. And like you will have these till your toes grow through the ends of these, until your feet stop growing. However, like since then, all these fast fashion companies have come about, and they're the ones who are mass producing like literal, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't want to judge people if you buy from it, but literal garbage. If something costs $3 for you to buy, like it's probably not that much to make, and they're mass producing it. So at what point did it turn from companies like Adidas and Nike making these things to like Shein, Temu, however you pronounce it?
I was actually telling my kids the other day, one of them, I was like, I'm not buying stuff from Shein. I would rather pay money for some higher quality things that are, I was like, they're so excited about the price. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about the price. Like we need to think about the full impact of this.
Right.
But I will say, I think, Nike and Adidas is like featured in the documentary. It's a higher quality product, but it also, I mean, there's a massive margin in there, and they are part of the problem because they've created purposefully these quicker cycles and like larger volumes of products, right? There isn't just one pair of Air Jordans that everybody wants now. There's 1,000 different colors and iterations.
Right.
And like, sneakerheads want 40 different pairs of Nikes because 1,000 different pairs of Nikes exist. If there was only 10 pairs. And so that's why I say like, it's not, no one person has sole accountability, right? It takes two to tango here. The company created 1,000 different versions of Nikes, and I own 3 different colors of Nike, of the same pair of Nikes, because I really like them, right? I mean, I did get them on sale. It's just, it takes both of us. We both have a role, and I think that's what's interesting about the documentary is it really was looking at both pieces. I mean, it was very much focused on just the consumerism and the overproduction and how corporations have created it, but it is also the consumers, right? And so I think, the big, like, this is a good time for us to shift towards, the solution, right? We are not going to, I myself and Erica cannot, I'm not saying there's not things we could do, but we can't change what all these corporations are doing overnight, right? The two of us aren't going to be able to change that. And even if every Inside Out Money listener, we all fought against what corporations are doing, like, we're not going to be able to change that, right? It's too big of a behemoth to fight with such a small group. And I don't mean to say that to like give up, but I'm just being realistic here. What we can do is control our own spending decisions and choices, right? I think like a big thought and challenge here for me that came out of this documentary and that we wanted to talk about in this episode is the act of quitting unnecessary buying and trying to reduce my consumerism is ultimately the key to gaining more control over my financial situation, especially during the uncertain times that we live in right now, right? There's a lot of funky things going on in the economy, and the world feels very out of control right now. So cool, there's a lot that I can't control, but the one thing I can control is my spending and me trying to fight back against these manipulative practices that are happening. And so, that does give me a little bit of solace. And when I watch a documentary like this, which is very much exposing the problem, the solution feels daunting. The bigger macro level solution feels daunting. I think that's the point I'm trying to make, right? The macro level solution feels daunting and overwhelming and like I can't personally control it. But the micro solution is my own choices and your choices, Erica, and everybody listening, your daily choices.
Yeah, and hopefully at some point, if everyone's focusing on what they can control, that those small individual choices can add up to a larger collective outcome.
Yeah, that's what people have been trying to do with a lot of the boycotts lately, which, you know, we don't have to get like too far off on that. Andrew and I talked about those in the episode we did recently. You know, the idea of, you know, all of these micro decisions adding up to something that actually has, you know, an impact on these companies. Like ultimately Amazon, Shein, Adidas, Apple, any of these companies, they wouldn't keep producing at this volume and keep doing the things that they've been doing if it wasn't working for them, right?
Yeah.
They're doing it because it's working and it's driving more business and it's driving more revenue and profits for them. And as soon as it stops working, they'll stop doing that. Now they might start doing something else. But yeah, so good points all around. So let's talk about, we're going to get into like, I want to call this a little bit of like a pep talk, a bunch of reminders and things to motivate all of us to consume less. These are all concepts that have been discussed in different points and books and just out in the world. And we just want to hit a lot of them that we think are very motivating to this topic in particular and are really good reminders to motivate you to consume less.
Yeah.
Which we're trying to do,
Yes.
right? As our goal.
Yeah. So we'll start with the first one, which is the illusion of happiness through buying, which is that advertisers and retailers constantly tell us that happiness can be found in their products, which we know is not true. And I would just say for my own, if I'm talking to just you and me, Maggie, let's try not to look at tangible things to make us happy, but look at connections, events, people, things that we do, experiences that we have, like intangible things will bring our happiness and contentment because that...
You just got back from Belize with your family.
Yeah, we had a great...
Does that bring you some happiness?
It brought me so much happiness. It was relaxing. I mean, here's an example. We were snorkeling out at the reefs there, and it's a very well-known spot for snorkeling, and I just love being in the water. I love underwater animals. As you know, sharks are my favorite animals. We were snorkeling with nurse sharks, which are not dangerous, which is why we were snorkeling with them. And it was just so beautiful. And I just came up from underwater and was like, I'm so fucking happy right now. Like, It was like, and I said it out loud. Like, I was just like, this is happiness right here. Like, yes, I spent money on the experience, but this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the 100th episode with like things we learn. Like I'm investing in myself. I am paying for things for experiences that make me happy, not the things. Like we were walking around the gift shops and it was like, all this stuff is just like a bunch of garbage. And the kids just wanted like bracelets, friendship bracelets that people had made there. We're like, that's cool. That's a really cool souvenir. Actually, the girl one, we walked Dogs for the Humane Society and she kept saying, this is my souvenir. This dog's my souvenir. It was like, no, we're not adopting a Belizean dog.
The memory of the dog is her souvenir.
Anyway, I got off track.
And I know, and we've done whole episodes on this, and we'll put some links in the show notes to like related episodes. But ultimately, like, yes, some level of physical stuff and, you know, improvements in your life and like owning a can opener, like, yeah, makes you happier, I'm sure. There are a lot of things that do. It's an excessive level of consumerism that we're saying is not going to make you happy, right? Like, and there's all sorts of research that like after you have a certain level of like creature comforts in your life, the incremental amount of physical stuff does not make you happier. And I think that's just, you know, one of the things we want to remind you. And then also there's the ephemeral nature of possessions, right? Everything we buy eventually fades and wears out. And it kind of loses its initial appeal shortly after purchasing, sometimes before it even arrives, right?
Yeah, so the dopamine hit wears off faster than the product itself.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes faster than the product gets to your door. I mean, there will be things where, like, I get the hit from the order and then I'll have a package and Greg's like, oh, there's a package. And I'm like, what? What did I order? Like, I can't even remember, you know? And I do think we have to remind ourselves that these feelings fade and they wear out. And like what doesn't fade is the memory of that you guys went and walked dogs with the Humane Society in Belize, right? Like that doesn't ever fade. I mean, eventually like your memory might fade, but you know what I mean?
Elephant up here.
Like an elephant. But your kids will remember. I think about the stuff my kids remember from trips, and it really is cool to hear them like, you know, reminisce about some memory where I'm like, oh, I didn't necessarily think they like appreciated that, but they remember these, not all of them, but they remember so many of these moments.
So there's also like the constant cycle of newness, which is like kind of what you talked about with Nike and Adidas, just always introducing new colors of things, new versions of the same thing, and that you feel like you need to have the newest version of it, and we get that trapped in our mind that we have to have those things.
Yeah, a new iPhone is a great example.
Yeah.
It's like your phone was working great, and all of a sudden Apple comes out with a new phone, and they like talk about some new features. And Greg's really good at like distilling whether the new features actually add value. Like one of the most recent one, he's like, I mean, the biggest thing is like it's made of titanium, and he's like, do you care about that? And I was like, no, I don't care about that. I don't know. I did not know what the old one was made out of anyways. So the fact that the new one's made out of titanium means nothing to me. But sometimes there are like actual new features that are interesting. But a lot of times it's just like, oh, now there's an iPhone 15. It gives you the feeling that you need something new. And again, this is because companies are creating so many new versions and fast fashion and, you know, all of that. And so, yeah, I think we need to remind ourselves and question and I think we need to be more discerning of whether we truly need to upgrade something. And like Greg's good at doing with when there's he kind of like nerds out on when there's like new iPhones coming out or new products or new versions of a car. And he's like, well, it's really only this and this, which doesn't really matter. It's, you know, not that important. And versus sometimes there are years where like, that's a whole new experience of a car, and it's actually worth it. And so, yeah, just a reminder of just because a new version has come out, it doesn't actually mean that your other thing that you already own is outdated and doesn't still have use and value, and just remind yourself of that.
Yeah, it may not be obsolete, which is what the companies want you to think with the planned obsolescence. And I think like iPhones are a good example of, you might be fine with your old one, and then you see someone has a new one, and then you kind of see that like pressure around you of like, oh, so-and-so has this. And it kind of like, you want to be current with what you have. And it's that external validation that comes from having the thing.
Well, it's a good reminder of like another concept, which is the futility of comparison. So it's the idea that the desire to be happy through possessions is always flawed and futile, because futile is a hard word for me to say, is futile because somebody will always have more than us, right? So we can't, if we can, but we'll never be happy if we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people, because there will always be somebody, I don't want to say always, right? Like, I guess if you have the new iPhone, then you're that person, but there's always somebody that has a bigger house than me, right? And so I can't constantly compare myself to other people. It's just a futile effort. So don't do it, right? It's easier said than done. I think one of the solutions to this excessive rampant consumerism is quit comparing ourselves to others, right? Like, I love the reminder that so many people give, which is like, most other people don't care as much about you and what you're doing as you think they do, right? So if you can realize that, you will spend much less time comparing yourself to others and thinking that you need more because you're trying to, I mean, I'm mixing concepts here, but thinking that you need more because you're trying to kind of impress other people, right? It's this lack of external validation, right? We buy things to impress other people, but in reality, people generally are not that impressed with our purchases. But yeah, it just, we think people care so much about us, but really most other people don't even remember or pay attention to like what we wear. There's been all these like surveys where it's like people don't even notice what you wear to the office.
And I feel bad saying this because it kind of sounds, it's a form of judgment, but I think if anyone's listening to this podcast, they'd probably agree. But like, if you're buying things to impress people, are those the people you want to surround yourself with? Like, that they only like you and are impressed by you because of the things that you've purchased?
Yeah.
You know, like that.
It's my favorite reason that I love traveling with you and like our core group of high school friends. Because I travel and I'm not like trying to pack to like look a certain way when we go out. I mean, like we look kind of rough when we go out sometimes.
I think people are like, do you need a free sandwich or a place to shower?
We're like the athleisure crew when we go out. But yeah, I just think, yeah, I do. I remember on Friends on Fire, we did a whole episode and it was called Nobody Cares. And it was a reminder that most people don't care, notice. And then to your point, Erica, if they do, is that really who you want to be friends with and who you're trying to do things? So it's this whole like mind, you end up in this whole like circular logic of just this cycle we go through of how we think about stuff. And I do think, you know, the reason I like doing this podcast and like talking to you about these discussions, and I think people like listening to them, is it's just a constant ongoing thing. Like I have this conversation with you, I'm really motivated and reminded how much this stuff doesn't matter. And then 5 seconds later, I go out into the world and I'm marketed to and I'm tempted to get this thing, you know, and think that this thing is going to add some level of additional happiness and like fill some void in my life. And then I have to remind myself like it's not you know, and sometimes I don't remind myself till I've already purchased it and then it shows up and then I realize I don't need it and
Yeah, but are we buying these things to fill a void or because it's like it strikes a nerve in a way? Like, you know, we like our t-shirts and hoodies, you know, we don't need those things, but it's like, oh, is it tied to a memory? Is it tied to something that is a future memory? Like what there, I feel like there's more there that, and again, maybe this is where I'm therapizing why you and I do this instead of recognizing it's filling something instead of like the way that you said that like Andrew and Mike are hardwired. And I think the landlord's like this too, just hardwired not to want those things. And that's the part I'm like very intrigued by. Like, how do you just like not spend money? How do you just not buy things?
Yeah. Future episode discussion. Because I think about that when we talk about Andrew's wife, Crystal, who like doesn't spend any money at like going out to get coffee or anything. Like, I don't actually think I'm not sure she's doing it to save money. I don't think she like wants to or values it. And look, but I could use the same example on myself of it's intentional spending. I don't own any like fancy expensive purses because they don't matter to me and other people do, but I do own Patagonia stuff and that's more expensive, right, than the average t-shirt. And I do enjoy getting a mocha latte, soy decaf, no whip from Starbucks because it tastes delicious and it's consistent every time I get it, no matter where I am.
Okay. All right. I feel like you said that very pointed, so I remember your coffee order next time we're traveling together.
Yeah. When you want to send me a drink. I wish coffee shops were like bars in our 20s where like somebody like sends you over a drink. Like I wish I could just walk into a Starbucks and some like middle-aged man from across the counter could be like, oh, I sent you this mocha latte because you looked like you needed a pick-me-up.
Again, because you're in your athleisure wear and they thought you were roughing it.
I like the way you rock those sweatpants, lady. I don't know what got me on that topic. Okay. But this is another big one for the pep talk of like reminding people why we should consume less. We talked about this earlier in the episode, but like the sort of burden of ownership, the hidden cost of consumption, there's a lot of ways to say it, the total cost of owning something. I'm going through a lot of this myself because we just finished this sunroom in my house. And so I'm going through the process of like buying furniture and like we had to buy a couch for it and like new TV and soundbar and some other things. And so it's like, you know, we bought the couch. There was an issue with the couch. I'm having to deal with the company about that. We like bought a soundbar. There was an issue with that soundbar. Greg had to go return it. It's like there's a bunch. It's not just that one thing. You know, that new possession takes up physical space in your home. It takes up mental space because you're kind of thinking about like I'm thinking about all the things my kids are going to spill on that couch, and then it's not like it'll get fixed, but I got to call somebody to come out and fix it, and like that's extra time. All of these purchases create additional anxiety and time into our lives. There's like a Henry David Thoreau quote about like the amount of life that we're exchanging for it, right? And like the true cost of that item is beyond just the price tag. There's the ongoing maintenance of it. There's the stress that it, broke and now I've got to fix it. And that it's, I bought a dehumidifier and it didn't work and I had to send it back to Amazon. I had to go back to the UPS store. I had to rebox it up. Like I had to deal with Amazon customer service around it. Then I had to go find a different brand that worked. And it's just, the owning something is not just a one-time purchase, right? There's so many other elements, and remind yourself of that when you're about to take on a new thing that's going to live in your home.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that it's not just like you have it and then you can get rid of it. It's like that is now I mean, I guess if it's bigger purchases versus like the small.
And to your getting rid of it point, then when it doesn't work anymore, you need to figure out how you're going to dispose of it. Because you can some of this stuff, but some things you can't even just put in the trash. Like they won't pick it up, right? Or you can't just put old paint cans in the trash, and you can't. So it's just like everything you buy, if we thought more about the total cost of ownership and the total, the hidden cost, the overall burden, it might make us like take a step back. Like I almost want to create a list of all the questions I have to ask myself before I buy something. Like, how will I dispose of this? Is there a resale value? Will I, like, what's the maintenance of this? Like, who will I call to fix this if it breaks? Like,
that's a great idea. I mean, it's really thinking about what is the life cycle of this thing that I am bringing into my life. Mm-hmm. You're buying it. What is the end stage for this thing? Like you said, paint. That's something like I wouldn't have even thought about, except we were recently disposing of a bunch of paint cans, which you can take back to any paint store, really, and they'll recycle it for you, or so they say. That's the thing, is I don't actually see that, but
is that true? They'll take if it still has paint in it, because it's like expensive to. Oh, I want to.
Yeah, I mean, just look in your area, at least in the Portland area. So many places took it back. There is something where you can dispose of if you put kitty litter in it. I don't know anything about that. I just know there's something about kitty litter and paint. I don't know. Maybe it's a TikTok thing. I made that up, but.
What? It looks like Sherwin-Williams, like, is an example. I don't know if you can do this at Home Depot.
I don't think Home Depot, but I think. I mean, I say that.
This is a good example. Like, it would make me want to buy more paint from Sherwin-Williams versus Home Depot if they actually help me to ethically dispose of it.
Right.
Which it looks like they do. I'm putting in my zip code right now. I didn't even, I can pay to take it to a place. Oh my gosh. They do. They take it back. Look at that. You kind of have to, I guess, look up in your area because there's different, recycling laws and stuff, but that's pretty cool. Okay, I know that wasn't your point, but actually it really would make me think about where I'm going to purchase something from if they help to recycle it in the end when I don't want it anymore.
The last point or concept we can talk about is convincing ourselves that we need to buy something before we can pursue a goal or activity. So an example might be you want to start going to the gym more. Well, you need new workout clothes. You can't go to the gym in whatever you have. You got to go get the latest trendy clothes.
Yeah, I need a new sports bra.
I mean, that is a big one for working out. But as just an example, yeah, you can use what you have. And there are times, this is where the landlord is really good at reminding the kids and me about this. And also it's very annoying sometimes when you do just want to buy that thing. But you want to take on a new activity or sport or something, like the kids try a new sport and we're like, well, maybe we should get this or that goes with the sport. And it's like, let's give them a season before we buy these things. Let's have them try this to see if they earn having the stuff. I kind of fall into that category of I need this stuff to be successful in whatever it is. It's that's not the thing that's not making me successful. It's a form of procrastination to get me to the goal in the end.
Yeah. I, again, think all of these points, it's no judgment. I've done almost every single one of these things. I've said, well, once I get a new pair of running shoes, I'm really going to step it up, or I have used the pursuit of a goal as an excuse to buy things. I'll put it that way.
That's a good way of spinning it. Yeah.
I tend to sort of, if I'm getting into something, unless you need it, I was I want to learn how to play the guitar. Well, you need a guitar to do that. But you don't need a whole new set of gym clothes to go to the gym more, right? You just need clothes, and you probably already have some, and you probably already own a sports bra. And then if you start to see yourself going a lot, maybe you reward yourself with, some new gym clothes. because you now say like, look, if I hit my goal of going to the gym 10 times this month, then I get to buy, you know, a new pair of leggings or whatever. Yeah, I think all of these concepts are, again, things that, you know, I have violated myself many times, but it's like the constant, I think the constant reminders, and again, it's why we do this podcast, because it is so easy. It's not just easy, it's like expected to fall into more consumer driven habits, because it is literally, like, back to this documentary, it is literally what all of these companies have massive teams and dollars that they're putting against trying to get us to buy more crap, right? And sometimes it's not crap. Sometimes it's important things that we actually value and are very intentional purchases. And that is for you to discern yourself, because you know what matters to you. What matters to you is different than what matters to me or Erica or Liz or Andrew or anybody else. And so, you know, I think if we had to, you know, close this out with one thing, it would be like, stop buying stupid shit. And you get to define what stupid is, because, you know, stupid, I was about to say stupid is as stupid does, but like, my mom hated the word stupid, by the way. I was like not allowed to say it growing up. I don't think it's a great word, but I did put it on a sticker. Like, I made Inside Out Money, stop buying stupid shit stickers. So if anyone wants one, they're for sale on Etsy for $3, which basically just covers the cost of shipping and the sticker. But if you can't afford the $3, DM me and I'll just send you one for free. Send me your address. And I recognize the irony of saying stop buying stupid shit, but then having a sticker that is something else that you have to buy. But the idea is that maybe that reminds you to like quit buying.
Yeah, and
stupid things.
And if I could maybe, I know you're ending on that.
No, keep going.
There's something that really stood out. We can't control the things that are happening all around us in the world, but we can control how we spend our money. We are being controlled by these marketers who are trying to really, I don't want to keep saying the word control, but take control of our minds, like trick us, confuse us. I don't want to give them that power. So this is another form of agency, which is a synonym of control.
Cinnamon rolls.
Cinnamon rolls. Synonym of control. So when you think about it, you have control over how you spend your money. Do you want to give that control to the people who are just trying to make money off of you? And they're doing it without a care in the world. Maybe some people in the documentary started to have some guilt and anxiety around like what they've created in all this, but it hasn't gotten better. Like, those are just a few people. It's only getting worse. You see the rich getting richer. I mean, if we're talking about Amazon, we're talking about Jeff Bezos. Is that who you really want to give your money to? You know?
Yeah.
So these are things to think about. Where are you putting your money when you're spending it? You are being controlled and manipulated. Not to sound like, you know, doomsday about it, but when you really think about it, it's like, do you really want this thing that badly, or did you just get tricked?
I mean, I think that's a great point to end on, because I do think that is the motivation and the reminder that might help many people, including us, take a moment to stop and think before we buy something. Like, are we making this purchase because it's something that we wanted and initiated, or are we doing it because someone else initiated that desire in us?
Ooh, good question.
Right?
Let's end on that. Let's keep it as a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Okay. As usual, I hope this episode was helpful in some way to you, because we enjoy doing this, but we really enjoy doing it because we think it's helpful and we hear that it's helpful. So we appreciate you all listening. We know your time is limited. Thank you for spending some of it with us. If you've enjoyed this episode, we always love to hear your thoughts. You can leave us a written review on Apple Podcast, or you can leave us a rating or comment on Spotify. We really appreciate it, and we read them all. We listen to them all, and we reply to them all.
We also encourage you to share this episode with a friend or family member to encourage ongoing discussions about money. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you, and you can leave a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or hit us up on Instagram. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Erica. I'm inspired. I was like very inspired at the beginning of the year to spend less, because we did our like end of year spend review. And I was like really good in January, getting a little loose in February. March just went off the rails. And I'm like trying to get Q2 back in order. So This is a good timing personally for me to have this discussion.
Okay, good. Me too. And since we are now a single household salary.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is a really
Income.
single household income, single income.
You're something.
Hold on. Let's start. Okay.
No, I'm going to include you trying to say that 5 times. No, there's no reason to fix it now. You've only got one income in your household.
Thanks for the reminder.
You lost your job. In case you missed the message.
Thank you for the reminder.
Erica was laid off very sadly, and we talked about it in our 100th episode because it happened the same day we were recording that episode. Sorry.
It's all right.
So 5 episodes ago, which is how Erica keeps time now, is by episodes. 5 episodes ago, she lost her job. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
If anyone wants to hire Erica,
hit us up on Instagram or text 404-981. Okay, we'll end here.
Okay. Bye. I forgot what we were even talking about. Bye, Erica.
All right. Bye, Maggie.